So those are my...
I'll pick each of those up, Peter, actually, if that's okay. First of all, implementation. I absolutely take the point about roster options, and I can reassure the board that the implementation project team is in place. It's been in place since just after the beginning of the consultation. And in fact, proposals on the way we should implement this have already been shared with staff side, really at a fairly early stage in the consultation process. And that's actually something we learned from the last, the two layers above this, where the move from consultation into implementation probably wasn't as smooth as it should be. So one of the things we're doing is setting up a partnership group that's between the implementation project team and our staff side colleagues, so that staff representatives have visibility and some say in how we go through the fairly tricky and important process of selection and appointment, because there are two big groups of people here who are going into three different roles. So the fairness around that James mentioned is very important, and that project team has been employed until the middle of December, and we expect this to finish on December the 6th at the latest. So that's the first thing to. Okay. The second technical point about a 4-week trial is quite interesting in this regard, because from a legal point of view, we have to allow a 4-week trial, but the organisation's position on the jobs we have here is that they will be suitable alternative employment to the jobs they do now. And from that point of view, if we were challenged after the 4 weeks, we would defend ourselves against that challenge. So whilst technically there is a 4-week trial, nonetheless, we will not be expecting disruption through that, because we will be expecting that the work people do is suitable alternative to the work they do.
Thank you.
So that's a kind of more technical point, really. Winter peaks is a very important one, and I mean that's one of the reasons why we could not wait another day to implement this. You know, as I've said, December the 6th is the day when this will be complete, and that will be the last possible date. If this was delayed anymore, we would have to wait until the new year, and in terms of the benefits managerially, culturally and financially out of this, that would be very difficult for us. So it's really important that we get on with this implementation straight away, and it is a significant number of people, so that's why the implementation is going to take a couple of months.
Okay, Roger.
And there was one more about development, and I think this is probably the most important thing of all, and the thing we need to be most mindful of, and that is that by doing a restructure, you do not will things to start to happen. Nobody will change the way they work unless they are supported to do that. And I think that's particularly the case for the team managers and the clinical leads. And the team managers, who in the form of team leaders and clinical team leaders, have already gone through 2 modules of what we're calling DT3, which is the Competent Manager program from the Strategic Development Program. Modules 3 and 4 will be ready and waiting for them as they are appointed. So on December the 7th, I would expect the team managers to start Module 3. So that's really important, and there will be a similar development program for clinical leads as well. So that the key people in here are supported. And finally, Chair, if I may just very quickly talk, and the shift manager. Yes. And there is some cultural work we need to do as well, which was called a Great Place to Work and is in the Strategic Development Programme, and that also needs to key into this as it starts to happen, and that's around things like team management, involvement of staff, recognition, and communication, and that will involve all frontline staff. So there is a lot of work we have to do. This, in a way, is just a start. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. I'm now going to ask the board whether it feels ready to make a decision on this. Yes. In that case, I just want to formally put before you the recommendation to go ahead with this operational reconfiguration in the form that it has been presented to us today. Is the board happy to do that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm hearing a strong yes on that. I want to thank everybody who's been involved. I want to thank the staff side and the individual members of staff who've worked so hard on this. I want to thank the implementation team in advance for the work that I know it's going to do. And I want to commit on behalf of the board to continue to support this and to look carefully at the review that we've been promised to see how this works out in practice. Thank you very much. Okay, let's then move straight on, because we're slightly behind, into the governance and compliance section of the agenda. Looking first at Trevor Smith, who's going to talk about the trust seal.
Trust seal has been used on one occasion since July meeting, as reported in the paper here, and that was for the implementation of the Pathfinder 111 scheme for urgent care access with NHS Luton.
Thank you. I think we're all very pleased that that went ahead, so it's good to know.
Can I just add that I did check, this does not make this a legally binding agreement, as it cannot be a legally binding agreement. In fact, the use of the trust seal was more about expediency to make sure that Luton did not feel discomforted by a refusal.
Okay. Tim, we've received reports from your committee, your finance committee. We've received a written report from your August meeting, and do you want to update us in an exceptionally succinct manner from the 6th of September?
Sure, very quickly then. We've seen the finance report anyway. Those issues
Yes.
Have been dealt with in greater depth in finance committee. We spent a lot of time on the Birmingham Home Health tender, which was very useful actually, and we have to say that despite the fact that we were late, a good recovery was made, and there was a lot of work done to get that tender out in time. Service line reporting was heavily discussed. We still have some apparent cross-subsidisation, especially in dental and West Yorks, that we need to address. The detail of that has been gone through. And a couple of things about finance itself. Firstly, the finance team restructuring is complete. I think there's just a couple of appointments to make, Trevor, aren't
Should
there?
be complete the end of this week,
Yeah,
which they're all post-filled.
They're nearly there, and we heard about that a long time ago, and it's been going on in the background. And finally, there is a programme for finance training for non-finance staff, and I think that's really important. And the finance committee were very supportive of the finance executive team in doing that.
Thank you, Tim. That's great. Okay, moving from finance to audit. Peter, would you like to make any particular comments about your meeting on the 13th of September?
Just a couple of things. We've made a few adjustments to the internal auditor's programme of work, including clinical governance issues, which particularly Sue wanted to add in, so those have been added in. We are making sure that all the previous internal audit reports and recommendations are properly closed down. So we're making sure that we have a conclusion to those. And there was another item which arose under counter fraud, which Nick's going to report in part to.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. Tim, you had your first Innovation Committee meeting.
We did. We were very pleased with it as well. Very quickly, we had 8 attendees externally with us. I won't go into any of the detail of the meeting, but it was an eclectic bunch, and we were very pleased with some of the comments that we've got. I think we've got 2 issues to pick up and deal with. Firstly, there was an appetite for something to happen with the attendees before the next planned Innovation Committee meeting, which is in March next year. So we've got to get our thinking caps on to do something else. And I'm not sure how we program that, Nick, and resource it and all the rest of it, but that was the measure of enthusiasm from the committee, which was great. And I think there's a general thing there that Matt's got to deal with, which is how do we engage with these people on an ongoing basis? And we need to get our brains around that, because we very much wanted to get one under our belt. The other thing that perhaps the board would have a view on the committee agreed that, one, we didn't want to publish our minutes because, by definition, it's a very free-flowing and it's a lot of opinions, basically. But we did want to put a summary on the website so that people know that we're doing this, and that was agreed by all the external speakers. So we need to think about how we summarise and say something about what we're doing and get it on the website. I think the piece for the board here is we decided this was an open and transparent meeting, but not all the details should be published because a lot of it was opinions, and I hope the board will support that.
That sounds sensible. Perhaps it might be possible to put some of the presentation material online.
Yes, maybe it will be possible. Certainly the stuff that we showed we can put online.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. That's good. Then I think the last of our committee reports is from Sue on clinical governance, which met earlier today.
We did. We met earlier today. We had a lively meeting as usual. Key areas that we covered. We received a report about the Take Care Now report from the CQC, which sets out requirements for governing GP out-of-hours contracts. And we considered the West Yorkshire contract against those requirements, identified some clinical governance issues that are now being monitored and dealt with. We had the governance report, which is a quarterly report that comes to the committee, which looks at the KPIs for clinical governance and considers the performance against that. And we had some discussions around those that were red or amber. Specifically, core reviews was one of the issues covered, and mandatory clinical training was also covered. We've reviewed our terms of reference as we normally do every year. There's minor changes, but nothing that really would affect business in the committee. And we're advised of claims and national incidents for review in a normal way. We had an update on progress in preparing for our NHS Education Authority assessment, and we're assured that we are on track, although there's substantial work still to be done. And we received an annual Safeguarding Children's report. We will be receiving a second one in December because the Monroe report has not yet been published, and we will need to update that annual Safeguarding report to take into account any recommendations that are in that report. And then finally we received the first service quality review on the own health, so that's Birmingham and Nottingham. A lively debate, some recommendations for additional information in there, and the intention is that report will come to the next board meeting in October.
Thank you very much, Sue. That's great. I'm assuming that we don't have any questions about the workings of the committees. I'm sure anything that's not a burning issue can be addressed privately to the committee chairs. Okay, thank you. The next thing we have is a formal review of whistleblowing or incidents under the whistleblowing policy. Roger, I think your short paper was very clear. Is there anything else you want to
No, this is the first report that we agreed should come to the board as a result of our action plan from the Francis report. We do have one incident which I'm not at liberty to go into detail about at this stage because it's still under investigation.
I think the important thing that was reassuring to the board was to see you have an incident that is under investigation. I think that's really what the board wants to know, that incidents are being investigated. So thank you for that.